fine.
We were talking about cyberpunk dystopia.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think about that? I know not a whole lot of people are for privacy invasions and everything else, but some people have very you know complicated
I mean,
feelings.
yeah, I mean, obviously it is like massive abuses taking place and whatever, and really, I'm being a pretty poor. I'm not really resisting it much. I've kind of have this sort of pessimistic acceptance of it, but I mean, I do think like, wow. I mean, the way all of this stuff is run is through these like big data centers that consume all this energy and require all this maintenance. It would be a big shame if like some accident were to happen to these data, totally hypothetically. I mean, hopefully no bad luck befalls them. But yeah, that's the only thing I wonder about it. But yeah,
It's terrifying because like
this is probably a good time to say. It's probably a good time to say if you want to edit any stuff out, feel free to cut out whatever. Like, I'll try not to say anything actionable. That's actually a thing that I've talked to like my other fellow game devs and whatever over here, because there's this non-profit organization over here called Game Anglia, and they basically set things up to like connect game developers in East Anglia, the sort of region of England that I live in.
okay.
And yeah, so they set up meetups. There's talks. Recently, I was able to go to the London Comic Con because they have a booth there, and so they scheduled it out like, oh, okay, we can have two people on our time or whatever. And so I went on Sunday, and that was great and whatever. But and so one of the things for one of the meetups, the show and tells, I gave a talk about like why you should consider arcade design, because the way I see it, like to be honest, I'm sick to death of all these like design videos and whatever talking about it from the player's perspective. Like I've heard enough of that. There's a lot of interesting stuff from the developer's perspective, and to me, when it comes to arcade games, it's great because it's much more manageable to think like, okay, a full successful run is going to last about half an hour. That's so much more manageable to like design and get it down to how you want it to be and how you want players to play it than having the goal of, oh, I want to do some open world RPG that lasts like 100 hours or whatever. That's so like so there's that aspect. So it's nice and manageable, and the way that you make that then appealing to players and feel like they're not, that they're getting their money's worth and whatever, is by making it quite difficult. So even though it's half an hour, it takes however many hours to actually get it to play it well enough where you do get that half an hour and whatever. So that's one aspect to it from the developer side. Like, and the other thing too, like what one of the number one things that is communicated to new developers is you have to be really careful not to like playtests and whatever are important so that you don't get totally lost in being like over familiar with your game.
Yeah.
And so the really nice thing with arcades games is no, that's a good thing. The more familiar you are with your game, then the more you're able to like tune it for the players who are spending so much time with it. So yeah, as say like arcade design philosophy, I think is really good at making like developers and players meet in the middle and just yeah.
So it's super fascinating because there's this trend that's been going on for God a decade now. Me and Goji Guy talked about it briefly, where it's arcade design, right? And it's these 30, 45-minute runs, but for some reason, and I don't know why. Actually, I know a little bit why, but I don't think they know why. like the players is they won't do like a shmup, or they wouldn't pick a shmup over like Dead Cells or like a roguelite, right? Because the idea that every run you're doing, you're gaining something for your player, even though like you
Yeah.
can, like the people that play shmups, the people that get into shmups can feel like their progression as a person. It's not like trackable, right? It's not like, okay,
Yeah.
you've gained, and that's kind of what
To an
Goji's.
extent, like you
Yeah.
do have stuff like school and whatever. Like at the moment I'm working on my Donpachi 1-all, and like
Nice.
I remember the first time I managed to crack 1 million points by the end of stage one. I was so hyped up. It was as if I beat the game. I was like,
Mhm.
yes, I did this. And it's funny because now the way I'm playing at the moment, if I don't crack at least like 1.1 million after all the end stage bonuses, whether I'm like, oh man, I'm behind on pace here. This isn't.
Yeah. Start being really hard
so
on
so that is
yourself.
no, yeah. So that is one aspect actually, and in one of my videos actually, I did mention how score is as much as I think maybe the perception, the preconception people who aren't familiar with the arcade games have is that, oh, score is for the super players to really show off and
Mm.
um, and to sort of demonstrate their dominance over the game. But I think equally score is really good for like encouraging more novice players or whatever. So like when a match showcases showing off Shmandala, uh, every time. Like I'm basically people's personal hype man when they're playing. I get really into it. I'm like, yeah, yeah, you're doing it, you're doing it. And like by the end, I say, oh man, like 100K, that's a great score. Like, well done, that's really good. That's really good for a first attempt or whatever, and all that kind of thing. So I do think again, it's part of it is communication, I think.
Mhm.
Because like something that you see quite often, especially with niche genres and whatever, is that people take the attitude that, oh, what we need to do is change some element of this, or we need to introduce this element from like, popular genres or whatever to to make this appealing to mainstream players and whatever. And so that's how you end up with all these shmups with that become roguelikes or whatever,
Shop
or have these like
systems. Yeah.
RPG mechanics and whatever. Like and it's funny because there's that video game donkeys publishing thing. They published that shmup thing recently, didn't they? It's called like Star
Oh
of
yeah.
Providence, or is that the way?
Yes. Star of
And I watched
Providence.
a bit
Yeah.
of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And I watched a bit of it of gameplay, and I was like, okay, no, like the fundamentals do seem to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then like this person died, and we're like, ah. And then I saw like the lives counter, and they had like 20 something lives. And
Yeah.
it's like at that point, it's not a lives counter, it's a health bar at that point, and
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of spoiled this exciting element of the genre. So, but getting back to the point I was saying about like appealing to the mainstream or whatever. So my attitude, instead of introducing these elements, which I don't think, if they do bring in new players, they're not then becoming interested in what's interesting about this genre.
Yeah.
When you add this stuff in, you're actually diluting the genre doing that. So my approach has been to figure out, okay, how do I communicate this? How do I let people in and see what's so cool about this and translate it for people?
Mm-hmm.
So like one thing I have to keep explaining to people at showcases and whatever is like, use the bomb. Use the bomb. Your bomb is your defensive item. And actually inspired me to add in this animation with the ship where you do like a flip to kind of communicate to people like, oh, this is a parry, and sort of translate it to
Right.
them that
Right.
way,
Yeah.
even though it
Yeah.
isn't actually a parry. Like, but yeah. So that's I suppose that's one of like my big goals with the game I'm making at the moment is to, instead of like not making, instead of diluting the genre actually tried to communicate to people what's so cool about this.
Yeah, yeah. Because score is mostly seen, like you said, as a veteran thing, but I found it really good to be a a marker of like increased ability, right? Or whether that
Yeah,
be with through game or just overall game knowledge. Like you don't have to be
yeah,
like, well, I play for score, and that means I got fucking big boy pants on. You know, it just means that the way that you see the game isn't by how many times you've cleared it. It just means that the way you see your progression in it is by the number at the top. That's all it means, you know.
mm,
And
yeah, yeah,
I think that that is taken in a certain way, and I wish it wasn't. Because like that,
yeah.
yeah, that's how like games, especially like Chorin Shaw, you know, when it's seen advertised, it's like, hey, this is my 2-all, this is my 4-all, this is my 3-all.
Mm,
But what interests me more than that is like, well, how many points did you score? Yeah, such
yeah,
and such and such. Because well, both are really great, and I'm never going to say that like that diminishes someone's run, because it doesn't. We just all see things differently. But especially with, and you know, I did notice some things in looking through the gameplay of Shmandala with like the triples that you have
yeah, yeah.
for the power ups. So I see that it is inspired by Chorin Shaw, and that's really cool. What can
Mm.
you tell us about the game? Because I've been ever since I saw that, you know, a lot of the videos on your channel. I'm like, okay, that looks fucking cool.
As you said, or as I've said already, and this, like, to be honest, this wasn't one of my original goals, but as I said, from showing off to people, this has sort of emerged as a goal for me. I want my game to be like a gateway for people into the genre. Like, something that I really hate is when there's some kind of like breakout, it's either a breakout game or movie or
Yes.
TV show, and the usual narrative is, oh, this piece of media has elevated the genre or whatever. It's rethought it. And like one particular example that I hate is people say that Twin Peaks, the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks, is this brilliant parody of soap operas. No, it's just a really good soap opera. It's just,
Or
that's kind of thing.
Hereditary is another one where it was like it elevated, or The Exorcist, it elevated horror movies, and it's like,
Yeah,
no, they're
you
just
see that
really
with horror
good.
movies, the prestige horror movies and whatever. Like, yeah, yeah. Um, and it sort of puts people against it as well because you're thinking, oh, so this is supposed to be some fancy schmancy like horror, okay, and it starts you off on the wrong foot with it, but yeah, so that's something that annoys me. So it's most likely not going to be some big breakout hit, but like if it does, then I'm going to try to be clear with people. No, no, no. If you enjoy Shmandala, please play Choran Shah, please play Donpachi, play Crimson Clover, play all these other games. This was always there in the genre. It's just that you didn't understand it
Mm.
already. So that's one of the new goals that emerged. But I mean, like the original inspiration was playing Choren Shah, and like Choren Shah made such a big impression on me because it's it's exactly what it needs to be,
Yes.
nothing more, nothing less. And also particularly as a developer, I looked at and it really inspires me because yeah, it is so focused in its scope and whatever, and it achieves exactly what it wants to achieve. And so that was the big thing for me. And it was like, okay. And the other inspiration is like the reason I really wanted to make shmup. It's funny because like part of why shmups get a bad reputation is that it's one of those things, those genres that's recommended to beginners to
Hmm.
to get into game development and whatever. And funnily enough, I had never made a shmup as a beginner. Like this is my first time making a shmup, and like the way I saw it wasn't, oh, this is simple, therefore this is only for beginners, whatever. My thought was, oh, this is so simple, there's nowhere for me to hide as a designer.
Yeah.
Like if I can't make this fun, then that makes me a bad designer. and that's what inspired me. It's like with like old kung fu movies or whatever, where you see the old like master with a white beard absolutely wipe the floor with the protagonist with like a stick.
Mm,
That's what shmups are to me. It's like, okay, if I really want to know whether I have the chops or whatever, then this is the genre I have to go into. And like, yeah, when you get into it and tweaking all these like little fundamental things, it is so inspiring. Just the consequences of those little changes and whatever. And already, like from making this game, I've had tons of ideas for then like mixing up the formula later on and whatever. So
yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, that's the other goal, is basically to prove that I can actually design a game well or something, because that's the other thing. Like so before making Shmandala, I've been making games, or at least I've been developing games since it would have been like 2016 or
Oh
2017 or
wow. So
something,
about a
because like
decade. Yeah.
yeah, coming on to a decade. I mean, I say developing games because one of the things I've been bad at is actually like releasing like full, well-rounded experiences or
Yeah.
whatever. But like the trouble I kept coming into was I would make these like really cool mechanics and whatever, and then it would come time to do level design to make those mechanics shine, and it'd be like, I'm kind of laying down the mechanics by my bad level design and whatever. So like, I mean, if we want to go back a bit further with how I got into shmups to begin with,
Yes, sir.
I suppose it would have been like, I think it was like around 2022 or 23. It must have been 2023. Um, that was it. I was making this 3D like parkour platformer thing, which to sort of like convey really quickly what the innovation with that was. Just imagine Spider-Man 2 for the PS2, but with like arm length webs, and that
That's
was the
actually
concept
sounds
behind
really
the game, to
cool.
make it a much more free form, like
Mm.
sort of like platforming parkour experience, because it was inspired by my like frustrations with like the Assassin's Creed series and whatever. Anyway, it's a whole thing. If you want to play the game, it is on my itch, and it's called Skip and Swing Stolen Edition, because development on that game ended. Development on that game ended when my laptop was burgled.
Oh my god.
No, yeah. To be honest, it wasn't actually that devastating, because in a strange way, it was kind of freeing, because it was like, oh, great, I'm back to a blank slate now.
Yeah.
I can, you know, just start on something new or whatever. But anyway, so that's why it's called that. If you want to play it, it's there. But so that was it. I just got the mechanics down for that game, and I was like, yeah, this feels great, and got all the juice in, awesome. Now I need to make levels. And so originally, as I said, it was inspired by Assassin's Creed. So I was originally wanting to do more of that kind of open level design and whatever. And so I decided, right, I need to like play a few games and like really study them to figure out like what how to actually achieve this. And one of the games that occurred to me to check out is this free game that I think you can get on Steam, and it's called Babdi, Babbdi.
Okay.
And I remembered this game because I'm subscribed to a few like curator channels on YouTube and whatever, and one of them is Alpha Beta Gamer,
Yep.
and they
I
literally just,
mhm.
oh, you watch it too, yeah. So they literally just show footage of the game, no commentary and
No
whatever, and just
commentary.
let you sort of like, yeah, which I like. There's a place for commentary, but it's also really nice having a channel where they just let the game speak for itself or whatever. And they showed off Bapti on like one of their recent episodes back then, and I
Mm.
remember watching it and thinking, oh yeah, this looks all right, but I mean, I think I pretty much get the game, and I'm not interested in playing it, even though it's free and whatever. So whatever. Anyway, so I remembered it, I then played it for myself, and it became like one of my favorite games.
Mm-hmm.
and I and because I mean, one of the things I found so clever about the game was at some point I realized, oh yeah, I am gonna get all the collectibles in this game. I'm enjoying it enough. I'm gonna do that, and I've accepted where if I hit a major roadblock or whatever, then I am just gonna look up a guide to get them all.
Mm.
But in the end, I didn't actually end up having to do that, and it is to do with the level design of that game, and it does such a good job of like drawing your eye to points of interest and like letting you sort of delve in and
Super
yeah, discover all
compelling.
the secrets and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So to veer back towards the point, um, so after playing this, I was reflecting on it. I was like, man, I completely got this game wrong. Like, video is not enough to really understand a game. To understand a game, you do actually have to play it and engage with it. And what that inspires me to do then is like, okay, what are some like famous games people rate, which I've seen footage of and go, oh, like I know, like this doesn't really seem to be my thing. And it's like one of the number one games I thought of was Rez, the
Res is so
Dreamcast like rail
cool.
shooter game,
Mm-hmm.
because like I would see screenshots and stuff and think, wow, this looks amazing, whatever. And then I would see actual gameplay and I was like, wait, you mean you don't even like move your guy?
Mm-mm.
It's literally just the reticule and firing and like a bomb and that's it. So I was never interested before that. But then I then took the plunge and did actually play that game, and it's one of my favorite games of all time
It's
now.
so
It,
good.
it is so well
Mm-hmm.
executed.
Yeah,
I need to do a 1cc of that game as well, actually, because
it's a
I
great
played it and
game.
loved it, but I didn't really get into the scoring. Yeah.
It's a great game that fits exactly what you've been talking about, where the design of it is incredibly Spartan. You know,
Yeah,
like it
and
is
again, that
incredibly focused, and I think that
yeah,
games because talking about Alpha Beta Gamer, he had a
yeah,
couple on there like Bapti, what you were talking about. One of my favorites that he had on there was Yames. He had a bunch of Yames games on there, which were like these weird, like bio horror, like Lovecraftian horror things.
yeah,
Those are much different, or not much different, but different in a way to like Rez and Chorin Shaw, where those are, yeah, sometimes you can just watch them and you can feel like you've gotten a lot out of them. And this goes back to like people
yeah.
that have seen, the videos of shooters, and they think, oh, this is super simple. I can get this just by watching it. And then when you actually
That was me
experience
for a
it,
long
yeah,
time. Just seeing like, oh wow, this is impressive. Like what's it, the Mishimi Sama
yeah,
hardest boss ever
Larsa,
thing. Wow,
yeah.
that looks impressive. Not really interested in playing it though. Like
Hmm.
but yeah, so I played Res and I was like blown away by it. And like even like with the music in that game, I can't really listen to the music on its own because the music really sings when it's in that context, when you feel the
You're
controller
part of the
like
beat. You're
pulsing
part
in
of
your
it.
hand to the beat and everything. And
Hmm.
like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's all about how it comes together and that kind of that kinesthesia and whatever. But so that blew me away. And again, like that really got me to appreciate, and there were other games where I learned this too. That really got me to appreciate like a kind of minimalism when it comes to game design
Hmm.
and just getting as much as you can out of these mechanics, which, obviously down the line then led me to arcade games where the whole point is these things are the controls are super simple so that anybody can jump in, but
Anyone.
the way that you hold them in is by then like interrogating every little nuance of this setup. And yeah, so that was really inspiring. But yeah, so I played Res. I then also played like Killer 7 as well because I
Ooh.
thought, wait, a third person shooter where you can't just go wherever you want. And to sort of fit this into the grand narrative or whatever of, how I came to shmup Jesus or whatever. Um that game really made me appreciate how constraints can like focus and experience and stop you from wasting your time. It was so weird playing that game for the first time, walking into a big room
You can't
and
move right or
just
left. It's just
your
straight
guy
back. Mm-hmm.
yeah, your guy not doing the stupid thing of like checking every single door around the place. No, your guy just runs straight to the door he's supposed
Mm-hmm.
to go to.
Yep.
No, and yeah, straight to the point, not wasting your time or anything.
Weird
And
forks where you have to decide, and like sometimes like getting yourself oriented in that game is so hard, but it's all kind of on purpose. You know, you're playing this person with I think 7 or 8 different um, uh, like personalities, and
personalities, yeah.
you would think the way that it's presented to you, you would think it would be, you know, kind of like you're saying a normal third person shooter, but no,
Mm.
it's incredibly streamlined, I guess, streamlined, but it's another one that
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
use that word Spartan for, because it's like 3 or 4 things. That's it. That's all those 3 or 4 things that are going on, and there's no mechanics that are wasted. It feels like the
mm.
game was thought of with its levels first, and then kind of the mechanics around that.
Yeah, almost. I mean, like, so I mean, first off, like, even though it is simple, there is such an attention to detail. So, like, one of
Mm-hmm.
the really nice things with the whole fork in the roads mechanic, whatever you call it, I think they call it like a junction system or
Yep.
something, I know. But like, one of the really nice bits of polish they have with that is you can hold the direction and hold the button to confirm ahead of time.
You'll just
So if you
go.
know where you're going, then you
Mm-hmm.
just go straight through it, and it's like super silky smooth and whatever. But like when it comes to the mechanics, like this didn't like strike me immediately, but it was when I was thinking about the game afterwards. But I think Killer 7 is such a great game for like conveying post 9/11 paranoia.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If we're gonna jump into this theme or whatever, because like the thing is with the intro movie, it establishes like okay, there's the what they call crazy smiles or whatever.
Yeah.
This leads to all these geopolitical machinations and whatever, and like my initial impression was okay, this is quite a naive take on like terrorism
Terrorism.
in the world and
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and you know like oh they literally have no ideology and whatever. There's no yeah, they're doing it for absolutely no reason. But what I kind of thought about later, and it's also strange that intro because when you're actually in the game, for people who don't know, it's not that you're going through crowds and like randomly one of them like attacks you. No, like you're going through these
Yeah.
deserted environments and whatever, and you're having to scan to pick out these invisible enemies and whatever. So that's another one of those things where you're like, hey, what's going on
A little
then?
bit like
But
Enemy Zero in a way, you know, on the Saturn.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so I was thinking about it afterwards and I was like, oh no, this is a perfect reflection of that psyche though, because I remember because you know I grew up during the 2000s and whatever, and I remember just being one of those like vague fears or whatever. But that was the wild thing about that game because obviously like I played it as say in like 2023 24 whatever, and so already I had long forgotten that fear, basically. Like, and so playing that game made me rediscover. I was thinking, like, oh wait, what's this remind me of? And it was like, oh yeah, it reminded me of that, you know, that weird childhood fear that I had. And um, and I suppose this is when we can get into the idea of like metaphorical design as well, because even though literally it's not depicting like random members of a crowd like coming out and attacking you.
Mm.
um
They're
it
hidden.
does convey that same feeling. They're hidden, exactly.
Mm.
And yeah, so again like Killer 7 became one of my favorite games of all time based off of that, as you say, the Spartan design and like how that Spartan design is then also used to convey a point. Because another thing about it too is there's kind of a theme of fate uh, in that game as well, and so that railroaded design also is a pretty good like
It's completely diegetic.
manifestation of that theme. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
you can literally only travel along this line and whatever. So that's the headier stuff to do with that game. But yeah. Um, so I don't know if you want to talk about Killer 7 more, or shall I
Hey,
carry
hey,
on with like
hey!
this history or whatever? Like,
This is one of the best things about how I run this is not an interview. You know, like the way that I approach these is very much like me and you were having a conversation. It just happens to be recorded. So
yeah,
and you know, then that also gives me like I said, you know, hour 2 hours. It gives me enough time to like if if it works naturally, that's cool. If it doesn't, I can edit around it to the point. But like I'm enjoying this. Like
okay.
I think that the way that and it's not just like drivel. You know, it's not
Oh,
like
that's good to
yeah yeah.
hear.
Suda51 is an artist that I have not necessarily a love hate relationship for, but a love apathy relationship for,
Mm,
where
yeah.
a lot of his stuff, or not a lot of his stuff, but there are like certain games in his catalog that I'm like, I love this, and then there's other ones like I'm not the biggest fan of No More Heroes, or
Yeah.
like Shadows of the
I
Damned. Shadows of the Damned is okay, but yeah.
yeah. I have No More Heroes downloaded because I'm wanting to work through his oeuvre or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But yeah, it is strange. Like the other thing I'll say about Killer 7, so like maybe we can get into a discussion about like, art and how you engaged with art or whatever. Get into some some nice small talk or whatever. But
Yeah,
like,
super heady small talk. Yeah.
yeah. But like the thing the thing that I've concluded with like how it is that the way that I get the most out of art is by not really being concerned about what it says about like
The
whether
message.
the artist is a good
Mm.
artist or not.
Okay. Okay. I
So
see what you
like
mean.
so I think so you see this quite often when like people someone like explains this like really cool interpretation of like a movie or a game or whatever, and then after telling you this amazing interpretation, they then it's like they disavow at the end by then saying, oh,
Mm.
but the artist probably didn't intend this. And I'm like, I don't care if the artist intended it, that's a really cool interpretation that you have. Like, and
Mm.
I think if I were to try to guess where this comes from, I think definitely part of it is that the way most people first engage with actually critiquing art and whatever is through school.
Yeah.
And the thing about school and like standardized testing and exams and whatever is that it becomes very important to figure out, okay, what is the student's like intrinsic ability in the subject or whatever. So it becomes that's not so bad when it comes to subjects like mathematics or whatever,
Things that are
because
factual
that
rather
is that
than yeah.
yeah, because that is part of like good practice, is to show you're working out and whatever. But when it comes to when it comes to arts, that isn't so great because your people students aren't sort of quite given the benefit of the doubt or whatever when it
Mm.
comes to either it's maybe different when they're critiquing another artist or whatever, but when they're given like creative assignments like writing something or drawing something or whatever, um, the way the teacher engages with it is not really the way that art is engaged with in real
No,
life. Like
no.
you're not being marked on like, oh, how good is your shading here? How good is your competition
Mm.
composition? Like when it comes to real life, like my view is art is there for the audience,
Yeah.
and like the artist is just as much a part of the audience as whatever. So like to me, I'm unconcerned with whether an artist intended something or not. I don't even care if the way I experienced something was outside of the way it was meant to be
Mm-hmm.
experienced. Like so long as I'm getting something out of it, then I'm gonna hold on to that. That's because it's for my benefit. It's
Yeah.
to enrich
Okay.
myself. Like that's the point of it. Like
Mm. Like not just to be
to connect.
consumed, but to like take something from that that might not be the intention of the artist. Like I always think of like Yagawa games, like Battle Garega. Like there's no way
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they could,
Well,
with like
yeah.
the rank system and everything, that they could have known that like all of those things were going to like interact in that way, and that 20 years later people would still be like figuring out new things about it.
And that's like artistically like part of the cool thing about arcade games is that because it's such an adversarial relationship between the player and the game,
Mm-hmm.
like there isn't this weird thing of like, oh no, you're not playing it right, you're not playing it the intended way. No, you're just meant to play it so that you can get an edge over the game and so that you
Aggressive
can like
play.
succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like which I mean was really significant for me because like even as a kid, I had this thing of like I would find exploits in games and like I would specifically not use them because even as a kid I was conscious of no, I want to play this game the way it was meant to be played and whatever and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So when I come across arcade games and it's like no, there are no rules, man. Like
Mm.
if you find an exploit, you use that and like even if you go in with the intention of not using these exploits pretty quickly because these games are so difficult, you're like, no, like that this is valid. The game is so tough and so unrelenting where it gives you permission to engage with it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so yeah, so getting back to well, if you have something to say, I don't want to
Oh no, no. I
monopolize the
was.
conversation. Like
It reminds me of the famous quote that Ikeda said, where he was like, if you're bombing in the first loop, then you're a bad player or something. Well, it's like then why
yeah.
even give me that mechanic, in that phase? Then if you don't want me to monopolize on it, because
Yeah.
and me and Chris have talked about this all the time, but one of the greatest things about arcade games, and arcade games in particular, are good about this. Not just shmups, but it's been talking to Germinator a lot too. So beat 'em ups also is the amount of expression with the very few mechanics that are there. So I'm thinking of like you got a punch and a kick button or a shoot and a bomb button, and you give me these things and you tell me, oh well, don't use it then, but like it's really up to me, and I'm going to do at the end of the day whatever's the easiest, not for the game, but whatever's the easiest for me.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, when we can start talking about like I've also come to the conclusion that like the medium that is closest to video games that we should be looking to a lot more for inspiration is actually music, which might
Okay.
sound funny because
No, not
I
really.
think, yeah, well, I'm saying to people who are non-musicians
Oh
because this
yeah,
is the thing. Like,
yeah.
if you're a non-musician, you think the primary verb when it comes to music is listen. When
Hmm.
it's not that, it's playing. It's the same verb as games. You're playing music, you're playing a game, and like part of the joy of playing a game is making great music on the screen.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like how like with Greeks and whatever, like their concept of music was that it wasn't just like pleasant sounds and whatever, but it's also like the motion of like planets in the solar system and
Mm.
whatever, that kind of
It
thing.
got super
That
deep.
kind of inspired, yeah, that kind of thing inspired me to go like, wait, but like when I'm playing a game and it's feeling good and it's looking good and whatever, that is in itself a kind of music. And I
Hmm.
think music is a great way of sort of conveying to people like how to engage with games in a way and like what's so appealing about them. Like what one of the things that I really hate is people talking about like consuming rather than engaging with a piece of media. I hate when people just experience something the one time and then they like throw it away
I
and they're like,
know.
wait, why would I ever play that again? I've already done it. And
That's
it's like,
so normalized nowadays when it comes to like
especially when you love a game or movie or whatever, it's like, wait, so this song that you love, do you only ever listen to it the one time? Like, no, of course not. You keep listening to it, even though you know where it goes. And
hmm
in fact, knowing where a song goes enhances the enjoyment. Like it's a known phenomenon with like there are songs where you listen to it the first time and you're like, I know, I don't really get it. I don't like this. But then you listen to it enough times over and over, particularly if you're like listening to an entire album or something.
hmm
That's usually the way you get sort of compelled to listen to it because you're like waiting for the songs that you do like on the first listen. But you listen to it enough times where you're then able to enjoy it and engage with it and whatever. So like, yeah.
Well, it's very interesting the way you put that because I just had this idea, and I'm sure this has probably been written down somewhere else. I just haven't read it, but the idea of like simple art versus like complex art, right? Of like, well,
Mm.
okay, so you look at like drawings and paintings and even music in a way, and you're like, okay, so that's like the first layer, right? And then you can
Mm.
combine those things to make a more complex piece of art. That's what I mean. Not like downing anything else because it's all
Yeah,
it all has its place, but like that's where like movies come from, or like when it becomes audio visual, I guess. And i
yeah, yeah,
i remember, I can't remember who said it, but um there was like this quote that said that shmups are a good sound, or amazing soundtrack with great gameplay, or something, or a soundtrack that you play through, or something like that. And that really stuck with me, especially being a musician, and going through and being like, okay, so this is a 30-minute to an hour long experience. I'm going to be hearing these songs, you know, thousands of times sometimes if you like a game
yeah.
enough. And so it does become of like a comfort in familiarization
Mm.
of going back and being like, okay, so sometimes even like timing parts of the level to music,
Mm.
or like
Yeah, yeah,
dodges or shots to music, or being like, one part that stands out to me, if we're going to talk about like a game that actually uses it, like an example would be Ketsui Stage 2. So when you pick up the
Mm.
power up and you go through, and then that tank comes out, and like the song like drops during that, it's
yeah, yeah,
it's it's not just hype in that way, but it's like a way of being like purposeful design in the way that all the parts are connected, and
yeah.
that is like the
The
perfect.
action is
Mm-hmm.
inextricable from the music. It's all one and the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah, because you listen to it then, and it's like, okay, so this you can't separate this in a way like you can
yeah,
normally, of being like, okay, well, I'm playing the game, and everything's together, and so now, in at that point, that listening to it outside, I would not get the same experience. But then it does become
no, yeah,
intertwined to when you do listen to it outside, and you see that in your head, or so something similar to that. Because I know whenever I hear like Trovan Shaw's any of the themes, I can see the level in my head. I can see the enemy patterns, and that comes not just from familiarization, but from them being you know like a piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's all like facets of a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, yeah. As you say, you see this a lot with shmups. I mean, like a few years ago, I had this revelation when like I was watching Once Upon a Time in the West,
I love that movie.
uh, and that great opening scene at the
Mm-hmm.
train station weather. And I'd seen it before, and I like liked the movie well enough, but I forget what prompted it, but like I was watching it this time and it suddenly clicked in my head like, oh, I should watch this more how I watch like a music video
Yeah.
where the music isn't just some accompaniment to it. No, the music is the point. The music is what's telling you the story right now. When you're just seeing these like static figures just glaring at each other and whatever, like the music is what's telling you what's going on. And
Well,
just
not just that, but that opening has no music, and what's crazy is the way that movie was filmed. Is there's no sound. There was filmed with no sound, so all of it's post production, and there's no music in that the first scene, which is amazing, like 10-minute scene, but it's all like sound effects, and the sound effects become musical and give like the
yes,
images
yeah,
its meaning.
yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, but no, but like music does come in with the harmonica,
Oh yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Because
I
that's
guess
it.
every time
Because Charles
harmonicas on
Bronson
stage.
shows up,
That's
and
right.
then yeah,
That's right.
and it's that great like super slow build up, the
Dude,
and
I
it's
love
all
that.
sort of building and building. Like, but
I
no,
love
like
that.
as you were saying, like the music of just the everyday sounds, like and like this is the thing, like if people have ever heard of what's its name? John Cage's like is it called 414 or whatever?
Yeah.
The piece of music where like the musician just sits down and plays nothing.
Crowd
Like
sounds, pretty
people
much.
like
Yeah.
yeah, people like to point to that as like, oh, yeah, yet another bit of like self-indulgent like modern art or whatever. But the entire point of that piece is for you to it's putting a different context to what you hear every day. So the
Hmm.
entire point is to actually listen, like, what can you actually hear? Oh, you can hear these people like shuffling in their seats or whatever. Oh, you can hear birds outside maybe. Like it's all about like actually fully experiencing and I suppose the term for it is being present or whatever, but
Yeah.
like and that's yeah that's the thing again bringing it back to shmups that I really enjoy about shmups and arcade design generally is that I feel as though I'm actually fully experiencing this game because it's forcing me to engage with every single nuance of how these things are placed and how they relate to each other and whatever.
Hmm.
um like talking about the one cc mentality, like it was so great discovering that and engaging with it because I then returned to older games I had played before and had liked but not fully engaged with, and it transforms them. So, like
It
the
does.
original Castlevania,
Hmm.
I actually did one all in because I think it may have been like prompted by a video maybe Mark or someone else did about like how these older NES games um, they were made by arcade players and they were kind of meant to be engaged with in that kind of
Hmm.
arcade way. And yeah, that was the thing. Like the first time playing Castlevania 1, I did it how I think a lot of modern players do it, where I basically saved after
Save
each
scum,
like
yeah.
significant bit that I did. Not necessarily save scumming. Maybe I wasn't maybe that bad. I know, but like just doing it like a modern game where it's like, okay, I beat that bit. Now
Right,
that's
right.
done, and I can put it aside.
Hmm.
Um, but then, but yeah, so I returned to it, and like there was something funny that struck me before when someone was describing it, and they were saying like, "Oh yeah," and with that game, it's so well designed, like you remember each and every bit of it. And I remember hearing that and feeling kind of bad because there are certain highlights that I remembered, but a lot of it I didn't. But then when I returned to it and I went in with this mentality of, no, no, if I run out of lives, then I'm restarting
Yeah.
all the way from the beginning. That was so much better. I then got that feeling where it's like, no, I can map the entire game out in my head now, and I know all these. And a lot of it also is stuff that you don't even see in a successful run, a successful one all, where you're aware, oh no, if I play this section in this way, then I'm going to encounter this problem, and you're holding all these different possibilities in your head as you're playing it. So, yeah, as I say, it was really exciting, like unlocking that for me.
You become really present in the way where it's
Yeah,
like you start treating it like there's danger in it, because if you lose all your
yeah,
lives, then you have to go and play all of that over again. And so the presence of mind in the arcade, 1cc sensibility, increases the enjoyment factor, and
yeah,
definitely the importance factor of what it means to you, because then it feels like you're investing more into something
yeah,
rather than it being an experience like so many things are nowadays. It's more of a test. It's, or not necessarily like in a bad way, but it's fucking with you as much as you're fucking with it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
No, I say that having it be understood by the player that like, no, I am trying to beat you. Like, this is me, the game talking. I am trying to beat you. Like, there's no holds. It's no holds barred. Like, that this is meant to be like a real conflict that you're supposed to overcome.
mm.
Um, I mean, you talk about it being like a test. I mean, that was originally why I brought up the parallels with music, because what I was going to say was I often find you talk about how you can watch a replay of a particular shmup or another game, and you can kind of tell which player is playing based off of what they
Yep.
do. And to me, it's very much like how when it comes to playing music or like playing guitar or whatever,
Hmm.
and you come across like a really cool song or whatever, oftentimes, and again, like this makes me wonder, like what exactly it is people who don't play and make music think it is, because I would imagine that like the preconception is that, oh no, you learn to do the song exactly and that's it.
Nope.
Whereas I don't know about you, but like no, it doesn't work that way. What you do is you go through it. Sounds like maybe if you are a super player of music, not shmups, but you do it exactly as you hear it or whatever. But like oftentimes it's more a case of you figure out the general outline. Maybe you figure out like, oh, okay, I can do these bits. I'll do them as they're played. This bit is a bit beyond me. It's some like crazy like Zappa line or whatever. So I'm just going to simplify it a bit and do it my own way. But that's the idea, and that's why I say it scratches that same itch for me playing shmups as like playing music and figuring out like a guitar bar or whatever. I'm like going through and I'm thinking, okay, I know this is maybe like the most this is like the scoring, the optimal scoring tactic here or whatever, but I'm just not really into that. I'm going to do it this other way because I
Yeah.
like how it feels in my fingers, that kind of
Wouldn't
thing.
that be so
And
boring if everybody played exactly the same way? Just like if everybody played
yeah,
music exactly the same way. I know that, like, I went on and showed my wife a song a couple days ago, and it's like a Jaco Pastorius cover, and it's completely different. Like, sounds completely different than the
no,
original.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, every time someone plays a song, it sounds like a different song. you know?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so in that way, I kind of think like I almost think like the ideal game would be like um as I say, like being with an instrument and having a song laid out for you where the player can be totally free to be like, okay, like I'm an absolute beginner, or there's some other reason why I really cannot play this anywhere near the way it's supposed to be played. So I'm going to make it my own. And like it's then the job of the game to kind of like at least have the general shape of what it is you're playing reflect what the designer intends. But like
Hmm.
yeah, that definitely informs how I think about games, where it's like it is about the player, and it's about the player making, yeah, as I say, making this kind of music that they enjoy that they enjoy like viewing and listening to and like feeling in their fingers.
That's so cool.
Um, by the way, you've talked about like your like shmup schedule and whatever, like you know
Mm.
the morning coffee and whatever, and going for that. I'm wondering, have you ever tried like playing a bit of what's your instrument, by the way? You're a bass player, are you? Or
So
like
so here let me see if I can move this real quick. So this is what I have just at my house. Like I got drums in a storage building because I don't have room at my apartment right now.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so
Oh,
I
nice.
got I got the fretless bass back there, and then
Yeah, yeah.
the six string Strat right there. I started out at 15 as a bass player. It was like one of those guys where I was like, I heard Joy Division for the first time and punk rock, and I was like,
Yeah,
fuck yeah. And
yeah.
then in my late teens, probably about 4 years later, I my best friend was a drummer, and I thought that was really cool because I was listening to like Billy Cobham at the time and like Mahavishnu
Yeah, yeah.
Orchestra, and then I ended up getting in like I don't know maybe 6 months later I ended up getting into John McLaughlin and Jeff Beck and a lot of those guys,
Mm.
Jimmy Page, and I was like, I want
Yeah,
to play
yeah.
guitar, and then I'm a fucking mess because
Yeah, yeah.
I could like bass is probably my most like mastered instrument when it comes to
Mm.
that's the most I've played in a thing, but like in Chorin Shaw, um, I think I'd mentioned it where I got copyright claimed because that's my song that I put in the beginning
Oh, yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
Chorin Shaw, where on it's so
That
fucked up.
that's when you know you've made it or you're on the track to making it when
Yeah.
YouTube copyright claims. Because I that hasn't affected me so far. I upload my stuff and
Mm,
they have nothing to say about it because
it's
clearly it's
such
not
a
popular enough.
fucking
But
pain in the ass, dude. Where like that song, I played everything but drums in it. So I there's an organ in
nice.
that song. There's three different guitars in that song, a bass guitar. I played some extra percussions and did half of the vocals in that part. So like
Yeah, yeah.
the singer also drummed and sang, and we did like a harmonized vocal thing. And so that's like 80% owned by me intellectually, right?
Yeah.
But I just don't own the like copyright to it, and that's what kind of fucking blows about it.
No,
In
yeah.
Zero Ranger, that all those songs in Zero Ranger were done 100% by me, and I think that's why those weren't copyright claimed.
Mm.
Well, also like I didn't put those on any streaming services or anything. Those were literally just sitting on
No,
my
yeah.
hard drive that I'd never shared with anybody, and I was like, well, if I don't use them, they're just gonna sit unlistened to on my hard
No,
drive.
yeah, yeah.
And I miss out of all the things that I don't do that I used to do, I miss playing live music.
No, that's one aspect where I feel like I'm quite deficient as a player because I play music basically just for me. I'm terrible if anybody's listening. Like I melt completely, but that's definitely something I need to get into. But no, and I started playing like the first instrument I ever learned was actually a clarinet, which
Oh
it's like
yeah,
hidden behind one of my guitars back there. But
in primary.
and I what's that?
Did you learn it in
Oh,
primary?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Oh, well done for knowing the correct grade school. Um, no, I was 8 years old, and I remember it was one of those things where one day a music teacher came in and says like, "Hey, here's all these instruments. Is anybody interested in playing?" And a girl I fancied at the time picked clarinet, so that's why I picked it, not knowing that they were just like one-to-one lessons. So that kind of disappointed me. But like, I did that for I think a few years, and actually, I did perform for the school on clarinet or whatever, doing something like Daisy Daisy or
Oh,
something
nice.
like not something super flash, but so I do have a little experience performing, but but what was the point I was getting at? So yeah, so from that I do know how to read music a little bit. It's
Mm.
kind of the equivalent of going like fa k I fuck fuck face. It's kind of like that when I look at sheet music or whatever. It's very like painful, but no. But then after that, I think when would it have been? It was either end of primary school or yeah, it must have been end of primary school. That's when I started learning guitar and like for clarinet, I did actually do exams and stuff, and
Oh
that
shit.
that's one of those things that totally put me off it, actually. So when I came to this guitar teacher, actually said like he asked like, "Oh, are you wanting to do exams for this and whatever?" I was like, "No, I just want to play or whatever." And it's like, okay, cool. Unfortunately, I think maybe he took that as an indication of like not getting into the theory of it so much because my teacher was really good at teaching me about like technique and like physically playing it and like the proper way to fret and like another really good one is like proper wrist posture and whatever so that you're not like
Getting arthritis
ruining
at
your body as you're
19
playing or
years
whatever.
old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So he was great for that. But then like I have this really strong memory of I learned to play whatever song with him and then, play through it. And then it got to a bit where it's like, okay, now do a solo. And it was like, what do you mean? How do you do that? And like super quickly in the moment, he just told me, oh, well, just use your first and third finger
Mm.
and that'll do. And like, now that I know about pentatonics and
Go
whatever,
through
I
the
understand
box.
like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I think like, oh, if you needed to shout something quickly to a kid to get them to get something half decent sounding,
Mm.
that would be what you would tell them.
Yeah.
Just use your first and third finger and like you're most of the way there. But
Mm-hmm.
like no, but that's interesting actually, because like so in my free time then I stopped lessons sometime in secondary school or whatever, but I always like picked up my guitar and played occasionally and like learned new songs and whatever. But in a way, it would always come back to that. That would really frustrate me. I would learn a song, be able to play it back, but then when it came time to improvise over it,
It's
I
tough.
was completely lost and like it all sounded terrible. And that would just like really frustrate me and I would just really get angry with myself. So as I say, it was spotty my guitar playing for so long. But then I actually got into in the 2010s watching Adam Neely's
I
videos.
love
Have you
Adam
ever seen
Neely.
his stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was watching his stuff, and it was ridiculous because for most of the time watching, I didn't even know what like a major third was, as
It's
opposed to
all
a minor
theory.
third or like a
Yeah.
perfect chord or whatever. Like, yeah, but I would still watch it and be kind of like engaged with it weirdly or whatever. But but when it came time to like the first lockdown in 2020, I was back at home because I had just graduated undergrad and whatever. And, lockdown happened, so I was stuck around. And, like, I just decided one day, because for a long time, like during university or whatever, I wasn't playing guitar because I didn't bring them over because they're a bit, of a hassle to
Yeah,
bring
they are.
if you don't know you're actually going to be playing them all the time. So yeah, I was back at home and I decided like, okay, I'm actually going to learn one major third is. I'm actually going to learn what a perfect fourth is and why it's a perfect fourth and not a major fourth or a minor fourth or whatever. I'm going to learn all this. So and it's like over here in the UK, that first lockdown in March, it was a scorching March. It was so hot, and so I would just be out in the garden with my acoustic guitar and just literally going through bit by bit, like, okay, so if this is the one, this is second, minor third, major third, going through it all, just like becoming familiar with the fretboard and whatever. And then once I learned that, I could then look up, like, oh, this is what a minor pentatonic is. And I would play those notes and figure out, like, oh, this actually sounds good. This
Mm.
actually sounds like it makes sense
It
now.
like opened
And
up the book for you. Yeah.
exactly. So I was finally like engaging with it properly and whatever. And it's like I think that's how I ended up first starting. I forget when I started doing it, but I then started actually coming up with musical ideas. And also once you learn about these notes and like how you build up chords, whether suddenly it made sense, like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, this is why I lift up this finger to do like a minor chord as opposed to a major chord or whatever. And then you're then able to experiment and go, okay, so what if I put like a sixth on top of this chord? Oh, it sounds this way, and a ninth. Oh, it sounds another way.
Suspended.
What if I
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
yeah, and inversions and stuff? What if I phrase it a different way so it's the same notes but arranged differently? And I say it completely open it up, and then naturally from that I started like coming up with musical ideas. And initially, I did try writing them down, like with sheet music from what I remember to whatever, but it was such a faff and whatever. I was like, no, I don't care about this. So I then just started like recording like ideas on my phone and whatever, and doing that for ages. And eventually, the first time I actually put my own music into a game, it would have been this game jam I did back in it may have been 2022 or 23, and it was a super basic thing. I just took my acoustic guitar and I did like this very bare bones like 12 bar blues, just like not even a proper chord, just to make sure it sounded good. I just did power chords and was like, okay, this is the one, now to the four, back to the one, four, five, four, one, and just like looping it over like that. But that was my first start, and then
Yeah. Got to start somewhere.
yeah, but yeah, so that's my history of music, and then also like because obviously if you listen to the track for Shmandala, it doesn't sound like there's an acoustic guitar or whatever. I first time, what would it have been? Oh yeah, it was a different game jam. Like in anticipation for it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a music track ahead of time to save me a bit of time, and what I did was I just opened up Audacity and I just, not using any plugins or whatever, extra plugins, I was just like, okay, well, if I do this like sine note, they're called chirps in Audacity when it's a
Mm.
sliding note. If I do this from this frequency to that, that kind of sounds like a kick. Okay, if I use this pink noise and like tail it off and whatever, I go on to sound design and I was able to sort of construct a track for this game jam, and that was really cool.
That is really cool.
Um,
That's the long way of
yeah,
doing it, but
it,
that
it
is.
is. It's painstaking, but like the cool thing about doing that kind of thing though is that you can basically try to directly copy whatever sound you hear somewhere else, but
Mm,
because of how the process is, you naturally end up making completely your own sound or whatever, and then
yeah.
you can go down like weird. You can start off with the intention of making one thing, but then end up with a completely different thing or whatever, and
It,
like sound design is really cool because so often I spend so much time making a particular sound. Like I
Mm.
did this glass breaking sound effect for the previous project before Shmandala I did. And what was it? I was needing some other sound for something later on. So I was just like, okay, what if I take this glass breaking sound and just really like twist it and chop it up and like
Yeah.
ended up coming up with some completely different. But like, yeah, so that's my history of music for you. But
It kind of reminds me a little bit of like what they used to do in the 80s with the Fairlight synthesizer, of like where it would record things and then you could manipulate that sound through recording. It's
yeah,
almost completely the opposite of that. And that's what's really interesting to me about it. And I wouldn't
yeah.
I wouldn't, like diss yourself too much because you're using, oh, and not just that, but you know how to read music. I don't. So
As
I have
say,
no
like
clue how to
like
read music.
barely literate.
But
But like
another thing is that you're unafraid of recording yourself and putting yourself out there, and that also comes down to game design too, of being like, you know, we talk about this in video form all the time, of being like unafraid of being creative and putting yourself out there.
I saw so many videos about like sound design and whatever, and
Mm.
because it's just kind of interesting learning how these things are made and whatever. And this was the first time I was like, oh, I can actually apply the stuff I'm learning in these videos for my own things. And like, I'm pretty sure that I realize this is a long diversion now than answering your original question, but I feel like every musician has to have had this experience at some point in their musical journey where like you're playing your instrument, and especially when it's acoustic guitars. I mean, as a kid, you're thinking, "Oh my God, this thing is so big, so bulky. It doesn't sound right. Like, if only I had like a more expensive, a more
Yep.
slicker instrument, then I would sound good or
I
whatever."
think that
And
now.
every
Yeah,
musician,
like
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But every musician has that defining formative experience where either it's a guitar lesson or you go to a workshop or something. For me, with guitar, it was a workshop. Like my parents used to take me to loads of folk festivals and whatever as a kid.
Oh, nice.
Um, and so I went into this workshop with this professional player, and I was a shy kid and whatever. So it was kind of mortifying when he pointed to me and was like, "Hey, like let me see that guitar of yours, whatever." I forget if he asked me to play something already, but anyway, so he took my guitar and it was like magic because
Mm.
suddenly this big bulky piece of wood, this is the same guitar actually.
No shit.
Suddenly this big bulky piece of wood suddenly transforms when this guy picks it up. It suddenly looked so small and like light and like manageable. And then he started playing this music and it was amazing. It was like the strings weren't even there. It was just like flowing like water and whatever.
Hmm.
And and then he handed it back to me and I took it and I
You could
suddenly had
see it.
that like
Hmm.
that innate understanding like, oh, the problem isn't the guitar, the problem is me. It's
Yeah.
coming from me.
The tool
So
the tool is important, but the tool doesn't make the music. The person makes the music. And
no, exactly.
a lot of
Yeah.
people, yeah, like yes, better tools mean that art becomes more efficient, but better tools don't mean that all of a sudden, it just becomes
I
like
mean,
yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about instruments and whatever, like definitely there are finer points, but
Mm,
even then it's matter of perspective. So like with this guitar, like there's a few points on it. It's something to do with like the action of the strings
yeah.
maybe, but like it really buzzes and but the thing is I've come to like really love it
Love
about
it.
this guitar
Hmm.
because it sounds like acoustic distortion or something. It sounds gnarly. So like again, it's one of those things where technically, from like an ideal guitar, you wouldn't
No.
necessarily want that, but I've learned to like it and I've learned to lean into that. That's another thing as well, like lean into your tools. So like
Hmm.
especially when it comes to sound design or something like, and this also relates to video games or whatever. Like, don't don't if you don't have the equipment for it, don't necessarily lean in or don't necessarily go for like a super realistic or polished sound. Just go, don't hide away from what it is, kind of
Mm.
thing. Like in that regards, and like anime is a big inspiration in terms of sound design because anime has just weird sound design. They
Crazy
use all
sound
sorts of
design.
like weird, like, and sometimes they use stuff just to convey an emotion of a character or whatever in a moment, and it's
Pushing.
just,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, all that kind of stuff. So like that's simply a big inspiration for the sound design. Just realizing like, oh, you don't have to constrain yourself to this being totally as like life or whatever. You can be more
Mm.
expressive with it, and the other thing too is like, what is it? I've totally blanked on what I was going to say. But anyway,
No,
so
no, no, you're fine.
that's the idea. Like lean into your tools and like, oh, that was it. And the other like really impactful thing for me, especially when it comes to acoustic guitar, is because that's the thing I mainly play. I like hardly ever play this Yamaha over here.
Oh, nice. I
Um,
love a good Yamaha though. Hmm.
no, yeah, but the other thing that made a big impact on me was starting to watch acoustic covers of like rock and also like in particular disco songs. I forget
Okay.
if it was like uh, uh what's his name from Supertramp, Niall Williams, is it?
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
god, I
yeah.
can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
It's
It
got
may have
it's
been him or someone else. That someone was doing like a disco tune on acoustic and like disco and like funk or whatever. That those are one of those genres where it's so part of the perception of it is so shaped by like the
super
like
electric.
guitar pedals, the
Hmm.
effects,
Or
the guitar pedals, the effects and whatever. And so it was one of those things where I never really engaged with it because I thought, well, I'm just not going to be able to do with this because like for my Yamaha, I don't have any guitar pedals. I literally just have an amp where you can turn the gain up and whatever, but like otherwise it's pretty basic. But I saw these acoustic versions of these songs and like when it comes to rock, specifically, I'm thinking of Dave Grohl doing like Everlong or something on like the Howard Stern show. There's a clip on YouTube of him playing it on acoustic,
hmm.
and that blew my mind because it was like, even though this is acoustic, like this is unmistakably rock, this is unmistakably funk, this is unmistakably disco, that kind of thing. So like again, that was like in the same vein as when I went to this workshop and like this instrument transformed, I suddenly then realized like, oh, genre comes from the playing of it as well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Saying
It's.
that though,
Hmm.
there is some like viral clip on YouTube where it's like, you know, acoustic death metal or something is basically just surf rock. So like,
Yeah. Well,
so,
once you
so
take away the distortion, it just
it's
becomes.
it's maybe not like totally um all all about the technique or whatever, but that was another inspiration for me where I was like, oh, okay, I can like mess around more with this. And again, it's all about how you play and bringing it back to shmups and arcade games and whatever. That's the thing that appeals to me is that it's about you and your ability and whatever.
Hmm.
So now that I said that with Audacity, you were talking about um, what were you talking about?
so,
You were
so, so,
you were moving on to
this is the perfect time to break from the audio side and go to the visual side. I would like to talk
yes.
about
You were talking about visuals.
how extremely unique Shmandala looks. Is that it seems to me from first look at least a very like Spanish influenced. Am I right? Wrong?
Visually,
It's
visually Spanish.
well, you know, because like Firebirds and the way it's got almost like an Aztecian thing is what is where my mind goes, you know. That might not be
Okay.
well. This is interesting because you were talking about interpretive design versus artistic.
Well, yeah, exactly. There you
Artistic, yeah. So
go.
it's like, but then at the same time, the artist is going like, "Damn it, that's not what I meant for it." But
No, I mean that's
what?
a cool interpretation. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of makes sense because, like, so in terms of visuals, I first really kind of hit upon my visual aesthetic when it comes to like 3D modeling and stuff. Like I've
Mm.
been 3D modeling for ages because like that same guitar teacher randomly one day he had like a copy of I think it was called 3ds Max or something. It was some
Okay.
like
Yeah.
3D modeling thing, and it was like, oh, here, try this out. And I ended up being quite obsessive with it. I like modeled my room in it at one point or
That's
something.
cool.
So I had quite a lot of quite far back. I would do stuff and like and again, like as a kid, one day in class they brought in these like little camera things where you can do animations. So I've
Mm.
also have like tons of time doing like these plasticine claymation animations and whatever as well. So when I started doing game development, I already had kind of a grounding in like doing animation and sort of like modeling stuff or whatever. So that was never really an issue for me. But when I really hit upon my visual aesthetic, it was for this game jam I did. It would have been, I think it was 2024, a couple of years ago. And what it was is I had already been doing like low poly modeling or whatever, but eventually I played the original Alone in the Dark games for the first time
That's cool.
as part of as part of that thing of like, okay, I'm actually going to experience these games for myself and see what stands out to me about them. And the Alone in the Dark games are really interesting because like I went into them totally expecting that I spend a few minutes in like one, two, and three, and then just like drop it after I got the gist. But like Alone in the Dark 1 is one of my favorite games ever because
Okay.
that game has amazing pacing
Mm.
because it's so much it never repeats itself. Like each specific encounter and like room is its own kind of like gimmick and like constructed sequence. And okay, one of my many projects before was this detective game I was doing where and that was part of my realization that I really should avoid like wordy games. It doesn't matter if this is the best like dialogue system ever. If the writing then can't take account of that
Yeah.
properly, if the writing isn't good enough, then it doesn't matter how cool the system is. The entire illusion falls apart. But part of that detective game was I was grappling with the idea. If you look at like indie detective games on YouTube or whatever, every single one of the dev videos basically boils down to the developer figuring out their own kind of like formal logic system or whatever, where it's
Yeah.
like if this and that, therefore this happens and whatever. And the problem with those kind of systems, as isn't interesting as they can be, is that it's really sort of unnatural to work with as a person, and it becomes this problem of like accounting for all the different lines of logic that a player can conceivably take. That's part of my big issue with like dialogue systems where you're given a list of options to pick from. It doesn't matter how many there are, because in a way, what I always find with those kind of RPGs and whatever is that I'm less thinking for myself how I would respond to particular questions, whether, and
Mm.
I'm more just looking through the options and just seeing what looks the most reasonable or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so in that way, I find they're not as intellectually stimulating as a lot of people make them out to
Well, you
be,
can
and
kind of
it's
see
actually
behind the
why.
curtain, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and you're kind of you're being sort of led by the nose a bit about like how you're supposed to think about a certain
Mm-hmm.
situation, whether, which is why I kind of think like with the Souls games, like dialogue options, if there are any options, it's normally just yes or no,
Very
which is brilliant. And
binary.
everyone,
Yeah.
yeah, which is brilliant because you on the face of it, you would think, oh, this is so limited and so unexpressive. But no, because they are so neutral, it is completely down to you to think, oh, I'm saying yes because of this, that, and the other. It's like giving you room to actually place yourself into the game. But because everyone has that experience like playing one of the Souls games for the first time where an NPC says, what do you say? Yes or no? And you're like, oh shit! Like normally I
Yeah.
just look at the dialogue option to tell me like what's the most reasonable thing, but no, I actually have to listen and like interpret what's going on here. But
Or you realize that you have to talk to him like 7 or 8 more times like after
no,
that,
yeah,
yeah,
there's
to get the full experience, and you're like, oh my god, how am I supposed to know that? And
no,
it
exactly.
wants you to kind of break into it in a way,
Yeah, exactly. Well, really place yourself into the situation and like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, actually think for yourself, what am I doing in this situation? Anyway, not to derail a
Yeah.
derail. So
We are
I bring
so
that
good
up to
at this.
say, I know, it's all me. I keep doing it.
Oh no, I am
I'm
just
not
as bad.
experienced
I
enough
am
at being
just as bad.
okay, cool. Anyway, so I bring that up to say, my solution to that with this detective game is okay, I'm not going to impose my logic. I'm not going to impose my way of working through a problem or a mystery onto the player.
Mm.
What I'm going to do is just provide the answer. So, like for the detective game, it would be like a missing persons case or whatever, where fundamentally the goal is to find the person. They don't really care if you found it out the correct way or you just stumbled into it randomly or whatever. Like you have that definite correct answer. And like again, if we're talking about schooling or whatever, maybe this is also part of a bad influence where people, especially like game devs and whatever, are really hung up on the idea of players doing things correctly, getting to the answer the correct way.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, I say my conclusion was let the player just read all the clues and everything else for themselves, and them using their human brain and like a piece of paper and a pencil and whatever, they can then figure out, oh, they must be on this street at this house number or whatever, and do it like that. So I bring that up to say the really cool thing about Alone in the Dark, the original tangent. Um, the really cool thing about that game is that you have this is like this definitely is an avenue to explore more in the future, but like it's basically a point and click game, but you have the option of firing a gun to
Mm-hmm.
like solve the problem another way. So
And
like
moving around in 3 dimensions, like people don't understand
yeah,
that,
yeah, exactly. No, yeah, yeah. So it breaks my heart when people like slander tank controls. That's another thing we can get into later. But like, um, but yeah. So it's basically a point and click, but it has some combat mechanics and whatever. So like, I think the famous example that if anyone's heard of Alone in the Dark knows of this is there's like a banquet room where there's a bunch of zombies, and it's totally possible to just walk into that room and kill all the zombies using like your melee items or like a gun or whatever. But uh, the trick of it, and this is where the point and click comes in, you can find, I forget whether you find some manky piece of meat and you put it into a cooking pot or something, or whether you find the cooking pot. But if you take that cooking pot and you realize, oh, this is a banquet room, I should put the pot of food down in this banquet room,
they'll all go
all
to
the
it.
zombies then become
Mm-hmm.
distracted by it. And so this is why I say this is like an interesting like avenue to explore in the future is like having a point and click, but like having a combat mechanic or something that makes sense within that game world that can be like a safety net. So like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't figure out the trick, you're not just stuck. You can actually do something else or
Like
whatever.
so
But
many
like
of them. Yeah, yeah.
so that's one of the really cool things about like the original Alone in the Dark. And like the example that I find really funny is this other kind of sort of puzzle combat thing where there's like a possessed suit of armor in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and I was already aware of it before playing the game, so I didn't attempt like aggroing or whatever. But I got to a certain point where like I had a few like I had like a rifle, a shotgun, and like a revolver or something. And so I did that thing that you do in like a lot of games with like quick saves or save states or whatever. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna unload as much ammunition against this guy as possible just to see how close I am to actually beating him. And and so what I did was so I did that. I like kept firing slowly and deliberately. Okay, empty the revolver, throw that away. Empty the rifle, throw that away. Empty the
Jesus.
shotgun, throw that away. And the other cool thing with the first Alone in the Dark, I don't think they brought it back for the second or third one. You can throw any item that you have in your
I
inventory.
forgot about that.
Yeah, so which is great for like conserving ammo and whatever in that game. So it's like a legitimate thing to use, and it gives a purpose to all these like junk items that you may like end up encountering. Anyway, so now I got to the point after I emptied all my shots, and like while I'm doing this, I'm sort of picturing the situation in my head where my guy is like desperately just going and then I start throwing stuff. And eventually I work my way I work my way down through my inventory to this item labeled as heavy statue. And immediately in my head I'm thinking, oh, of course, a heavy statue, blunt damage does really well against armor. So I chucked that thing right to the suit of armor and it died like that. So then I reloaded my save, led with the statue, and it died. And I was like, oh, great! I managed to figure that out using like
That's
real
awesome.
world logic. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. That's not the end of the story though. So I then keep exploring the house, and and then I get to the library, and you go through the library, and you find all these like books with like different clues and whatever. And I come across this one book where it says like, oh yeah, this ancient like Native American curse or whatever, you need to invoke this holy statue in order to defeat it. And that's when the gears started turning in my head, and I realized, oh, like I was I was being totally idiotic. I just thought it worked because it was heavy, but no, it was actually that I had this
It
like
had
magical property
invocation
or
on
whatever.
it.
And that's like, and to me that's a great example of like a gameplay driven gag in a game, and it's not why it's not so vital to make sure that players are taking actions for like the correct reasons or whatever,
Hmm.
because this was super memorable to me. Like it was me playing out like a comedy skit totally naturally without even realizing it, and say it gave me a good laugh afterwards because I was just being totally like dumb about it. But like, yeah. um so so yeah, so Alone in the Dark made a big impression on me. The other thing that made a big impression on me was the visuals of it. So in particular, the zombie models.
Oh yeah.
I love with those like early 3D games how sort of deliberate and expressive they were with the polygons and whatever. So
Hmm.
like I think with the zombie, like the hand is like a single polygon, but it's shaped close enough, and like the proportions are close enough where you can see exactly what it's supposed to be. And
Or like
yeah, I
doesn't it have like
really
blood coming out of its nose and it's like purple and like that's what I remember is a lot of like it might be 6 polygons or whatever, but it has like deliberate artistic intent to it.
and like the color choices and whatever are
Mm-hmm.
so good as well. And so I say that made an impression on me. I mean, I always kind of had a fascination with low poly stuff because like the time like growing up as a kid in the 2000s, like um, I had a PS2, and I would also play PS1 games on it as well. And like I didn't have this attitude of like, oh, this is old and dumb and whatever. Like I was fascinated by it
Mm-hmm.
because it was so much different to like what were then the modern games at the time. Like I remember in particular playing like it was either Tomb Raider 1 or Tomb Raider 2 at like my cousin's house or something, and just being fascinated by that game, both visually but also the way it controls, because it didn't control like every other
It's very weird,
3D
yeah.
platformer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's a legitimate like precision 3D platformer because it's all based on like paces and like lining up against edges and whatever. Anyway, super cool game. Um, so yeah, as I say, I always had that fascination for that low poly look and whatever. And it was playing Alone in the Dark where I thought, oh, yeah, this is so cool, and they're able to have so much control and be so specific about how this looks because it's not using dynamic lights or anything like that. Um, and that like really appealed to me was being able to like color something in the 3D modeling program and to know in the game, okay, this is going to look correct because I don't have these light sources like mucking up
Mm-hmm.
how this thing looks and whatever. So the first time I actually implemented this was it was it was a game jam that I didn't actually end up managing to submit in time for. Um, it was actually, I think it may have been the first or second Pirate Software game jam back before he
Oh
became
yeah.
like the pariah and whatever. But that was the first one, and the theme was Shadows and Alchemy. And so at that time, I was playing. I was going through a bunch of like character action games. So I say a bunch. It was basically just Devil May Cry 3 because I had already played Devil May Cry 1 like a few years before then or whatever. Bayonetta and also Vanquish. And
Vanquish
so
is so good.
yeah. So for this first game jam or this there was a sequence of two game jams. The second one I did manage to submit for, but for this first one, Shadows and Alchemy, I was like, okay, I really want to do a character action game. Looking back on it, I realized, oh, I need to become a lot more familiar with like beat 'em ups and beat 'em up design to really do justice to that genre and whatever. But I didn't know that at that time, so I came up with this thing about like yeah, the defeating Nephilim and like your style bar was like it goes through like the process, the alchemical process and whatever, blah blah blah. Anyway, so that was my first time employing that style where it was all flat shaded. The only sort of lighting that that game has was literally just a function in the shader saying, okay, depending on how far you are from the center of the stage, just like darken the model like uniformly or whatever. And I was really pleased with how that turned out, whatever. And the one that immediately followed that up was a Game Maker's Toolkit game jam where that was inspired by Vanquish, and it was this weird like it was like first person tank controls with kind of where you can sort of slide on the ground and do drifts and whatever,
That's cool.
but you have this gun that you move in like screen space that you then fire up and whatever. So the basic idea is like turning, you can whip around while turning whatever, while still being able to like shoot precisely by using the mouse and whatever. Anyway, so for that game, I then came up with some more models and whatever, and that was actually the game jam where I did my first like properly produced track and whatever. I think I called it August Nights or something. But anyway, so that was how that visual style came about. It was mostly inspired by the original Alone in the Dark games. and yeah, when it came to Shmandala, doing Shmandala, like originally, I did do a kind of prototype as part of this. So through Game Anglia, I met the people at Pinfall Games, and we hit it off immediately and whatever. And they put on this like internship, this 4 week internship program, where the basic idea is they put all these interns into groups, and they like over 4 weeks they make this arcade game that they then put onto this demo disc, which they then publish on Steam or whatever. You can check it out now. But basically, it's an opportunity. It's giving like graduates, people at uni or college or whatever, and graduates a chance to actually work in a team and produce something and have something published on Steam and whatever.
The beginning of a
So
portfolio, yeah.
yeah, for like portfolio work and whatever. So so I did that, and I was on a team with three other people, and fairly quickly, like at this point, I had played Sharon Shah, and I was like, oh, I really want to make a shmup or whatever of some kind, and like when we first got put into the groups, we did our initial call where we like figured out, okay, everyone pitches their idea, and we see which is the best one, and basically, I was the one who seemed to have the best idea of what I wanted. And as it turned out later, I was actually also the one with the most experience as well. So I ended up kind of being the team lead on that.
Oh, nice.
And we did this, yeah, and we did this 4 week prototype called UFO Unidentified Firing Object. And if you play that, you can see like the it's just the one stage with again the loop two with the revenge bullets and whatever. But if you play that, like that is still mostly what the first stage of Shmandala is at the moment. Um, that was like a great chance to like dive straight in. It's great having that kind of firm deadline to get everything together and make sure like, oh yeah, this does actually work and whatever. And so yeah, at the end of it, that was a great success. Time carried on. I was still working on this other project I had, which is called Sidewinder, which is like now on hiatus at the moment, but it's basically kind of like a 6 degrees of freedom kind of like racing drifting game.
Oh,
It's a weird
okay.
one. You can also play a demo for that on my itch or whatever. But
Kind of sounds like it
that was
reminds me
actually
of
in
Descent. Yeah, a little bit.
kind of, yeah. But
Mm.
like, I mean, I still need to figure out exactly what the structure of that game is, but it was inspired by Ace Combat, and kind of
Oh,
being disappointed with how each of the jets in that game basically control the same. It's
exactly
just
the same. Mm.
difference. Yeah, it's just difference in like turning speed and whatever. So that my frustration with that, and also YouTube started recommending me these FPV drone videos. Have you ever seen this?
Mm-mm.
So first person view drone footage, FPV drones, and the first time I saw a short of that, I was like, oh, this is like a really cool animated, sequence or whatever. But then I watched a few more of them and realized, oh no, wait, this is real life, and like they move in such a cool way because like the way they control is that you have the normal like pitch and roll controls like you do with like playing in a video game or whatever, but then you also have a stick for which is like turning this way. So
Mm.
I should explain. Pitch is this, roll is that, and yaw is this. So you're controlling all of this at once, and because a drone is propelling itself like vertically, it can do all these like cool sort of slides and stuff. Like it's hard to sort of explain, with words how they go, but I guess this is when you can cut in like a quick
Yeah,
shot of FPV drone footage.
I can explain what a VTOL is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just be like,
But
hey,
it's like a
it's
VTOL.
mm,
It's like a VTOL on steroids, though. They're just so
exactly.
light and nimble, and they do. And the people who are into this stuff, they do all this cool stuff, like
Well, it
going
weighs like
through like
nothing, you
disused
know?
factories and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so anyway, so I was just so struck by like how this moved. It was like nothing I ever saw before, and thankfully I did find like this free, like I think it's called something like FPV drone simulator or something.
Okay.
You can get on Steam, and so I played that. Totally ignored the tutorial or whatever, and I just figured out for myself like, oh right, this is how this controls and whatever. And it was such a cool experience, sort of learning to grapple with this really weird way of like controlling an object in 3D space. Anyway, so naturally, I was like, okay, I have to make something of my own with this, and so that's what led to Sidewinding. And I thought of that name for it because I thought that that was quite a nice, succinct way of describing like the motion that you're doing with this game. Like,
Mm.
as it turns out for my game, it doesn't control like a drone. It's like this weird zero gravity thing where you're able to do drifts and stuff. I made like this trailer for it on my YouTube actually, so you can see a bit of how it controls and whatever. But so yeah, and to tie this back into visual style and whatever for that game, I was kind of going for this like weird abstract like early CGI like trapper keeper aesthetic or
Yeah.
whatever. So a lot of like weird reflective objects in space with this like weird infinite horizon with like water and whatever going on. And the way I was able to achieve that background was basically applying what I knew about shaders and just doing that with the skybox. So just being like, okay, if we take the view direction at this point, oh, it's looking up, therefore that should be sky. If it's looking down, it's ground. And like using noise textures and these mathematical operations and whatever, just to come up with these like weird. Like originally, I did it to make clouds and like a sort of sunset sky. That was the original intention. But then when it came to Shmandala and it came time to be like, okay, um, how am I going to change UFO to reflect my aesthetic? Because I had a pixel artist and a background artist for that game who had their own style, and for Shmandala, I didn't want to do that kind of pixel art look, and I didn't want to do a strictly faithful like early 3D look either. I wanted it to be my own thing, basically, just like taking what I like about those things and sort of like
And distilling it
projecting
down.
forward with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 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 the process for actually coming up with that weird sort of like cloudy cloudy shader for Shmandala was I opened up Unity and by the way, the game is in Unity, and actually, in making the game, I have become quite frustrated with it, and I'm starting to think like shmups are so simple in their mechanics and whatever that I am thinking once the game is released, doing my own kind of custom engine thing, which should be quite fun to do in my free time. So I opened up Unity and it has this tool, Shader Graph, where you can make shaders visually and whatever, and it's great. It's like the one thing that I'll miss from Unity is being able to use that tool. Probably what I'll end up doing is like prototype shaders in Unity and then just translate it to, GLSL or whatever, I don't know. But or software rendering, that's another interesting thing. But
Okay.
anyway, that's getting off topic. But
We're so good at
but
that.
because now I'm actually speaking about the points, which is Shmandala and whatever. So by the way, there you go. Follow the QR code. There you
Oh
go.
yeah, yeah. So that's a QR code for the page.
That's like all the links to all the different stuff. There's a Discord set up. There's
Mm.
my YouTube. There's also my SoundCloud if you want a preview of what the other tracks in the game are going to be. I'm going to tweak them slightly, I think, but they're still mostly what it's going to be. And and there's the web demo and the Steam page and all that good stuff. So yeah, I'll remember to plug all that stuff at the end. But
Most certainly.
so yeah, the process for coming up with that background in Shmandala was I opened it up and I literally just put down every single kind of noise that is ready out of the box in Shadergraph, and I just started playing with them. And like the goal in my head was I wanted something sort of cloudy looking, and like because one of the things I love so much about shmups is that they're so fundamental in their mechanics that you can put any kind of visual you want over the top of those fundamental mechanics. So like with the prototype, it was quite a conventional like setup where you're like a flying saucer, like fighting like robots or whatever. And so for Shmandala, I knew I wanted something much more different to that, something a lot more sort of I guess subconscious. Like I was trying to convey what you see in your dreams and whatever, which is why it's interesting that you say it sort of looks like that kind of Spanish or like
Yeah.
Aztec-y kind of look
Like
and whatever. Because
like
I suppose
Quetzalcoatl
it's
kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah. Because I suppose we're all tapped into this general unconscious or whatever. I suppose that's it. But I mean,
This episode, this
legitimately,
week
I
on
suppose
Ancient
if you're
Aliens. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, like not ancient aliens, like people are pretty incredible. Like actual
Mm.
people did actually do that stuff. Don't put them down.
Yeah,
But like,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, getting back to the point. So like, I mean, it's like with dreams and whatever. There's this fixation on like eyes and like your teeth falling out
Mm.
and all this kind of stuff. So and that actually gets me onto a different topic, but I'll remember to switch to that. But like, um, so that's what I was channeling. So I was thinking for the backgrounds, I wanted them to be this kind of cloudy, amorphous, non-specific thing. Also because that makes it very simple production-wise, because as nice as it would be to have like really cool, like specific backgrounds with like a specific beginning, middle, and end and whatever, for the sake of making this manageable to do in like a year on my own. I wanted something that was a lot looser. Um, so yeah, I had all these different noise textures out, and I need to do a devlog actually describing the process, because it's very easy to just show the final product, but I think it's a lot more interesting to explain to people
See it
how I
in
actually got that.
process.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so I had, I think it was like basic white noise, or I think there's also some simplex noise in there, whatever. Anyway, so I had all these different noise textures, and like the idea is you have them scrolling over at different rates and whatever. And the thing is, if you were to just overlay them just like that, it's still quite obvious that they are separate textures. So the way that you can kind of uh, glue them together and make it seem as if it's this single object that's sort of wavy and sort of shifting and morphing is by uh, posterizing it. So like limiting it to a few distinct levels. So if you imagine like a super smooth grayscale going from black to white,
Hmm.
taking that and like divvying it up into chunks where you have full white here, slightly darker, dark grey, black, going like that. When you do that, it ends up sandwiching these different elements together, and you get these cool sort of cloud shaped things. So
That's so cool.
that I was already familiar. Yeah, that was already familiar with doing like the clouds for sidewinding or whatever. And then for this, so I had that basic thing, and I knew I wanted to convey speed, because like I the really interesting thing to me is that one of the accessibility options for UFO was you can set how fast the background scrolls. Because someone was complaining about motion
Motion
sickness and
sickness.
whatever, and it was really interesting doing that because you can actually set it to zero, and it's amazing how that to me that totally kills the feeling of the game when it's static like that. Like even though it doesn't actually affect the gameplay, having it scroll super fast in the background feels like you're going at a million miles
Moving.
an hour and just like holding on by the seat of your pants or whatever. So like, so I knew I wanted to convey that speed right. So I had this kind of cloudy thing going on, and that was scrolling by really quickly. And and so I started experimenting with okay, how can I do like beat lines or something like that? And I ended up, I think in the shader, it ended up being like Voronoi noise, which is like this thing that looks like soap bubbles almost. It's like all these different cells and they sort of join together and whatever. I took that, but like only sampled it along one axis. So you have these points streaking down the screen that sort of come and go as the thing progresses. And like a lot of this stuff, like with me making music and whatever, is I sort of go in with this overall goal, but then I just see where it leads me and just sort of mess around with stuff. And a lot of it is trial and error and whatever. So like I was intending to do like these speed streaks and whatever, but I think I was playing around with like how quickly you scroll it sideways or something and it's like combining that with clouds. But this really weird thing happens where like it ended up looking as though it was picking out these contours in the clouds,
Mm.
which really made them look like clouds and whatever. And so I was looking at that and thinking about it, it's like, oh, well, this really needs like lightning strikes now. And like you mentioned like Battle Gurega, like right at the start of this, and like you would think looking at Shmandala and like the sort of thundercloud look that comes in at one point that I was drawing on Balgarega for that. That was before I was aware of that
It
stage, but
was
that stage
accidental.
does look amazing and whatever. But like yeah, great minds think alike, I guess. But
Hmm.
so yeah, and then it was like, okay, so what if I do this again, but like make the line super thin and like and that was how I got that kind of lightning effect going on. Anyway, so I was able to set all this up. Like the thundercloud background that you see behind the boss, the stage one boss, that was the original thing that I made. And see, I did that. I got the clouds. I got these lightning strikes and whatever. I then also did this thing to give it a bit more dimensionality and to make it not look so flat. I also like messed around with the sort of coordinates so that it looked as if it was bending round.
Yeah, yeah.
So like there's
It gives a
yeah,
pseudo 3D feel to it,
yeah, exactly.
which I really like. The stuff has a kind of a depth that it doesn't look like polygonal, and but it doesn't look
Mm.
pixely either and like flat. It's got a
Yeah, yeah.
really weird dimensionality to it that is super
As I say,
unique.
sort of the more in a weird way, the closer it can be to something recognizable without strictly being that thing,
Hmm.
the better because it gives it that kind of uncanny feeling. But so yeah, I added that in so you can kind of bend it in like this way vertically, and you can also bend it that way. So I came up with that, and like the final thing I did. So again, to make it super simple to come up with different backgrounds and whatever, I also have this process where I can feed the shader like excuse me, I can feed the shader like I think it's four different colors. And based off of those four colors, it like colors the background. So like so there's that aspect that you can twiddle around with. And also, the final thing I do is I do this dither effect. Because in my mind, going into it, I was thinking, okay, this is a really nice way of like making the backgrounds just be in the background and like have the actual active elements, whatever, be
On
still be
top.
super clear, even though the background is going crazy and whatever. So and yeah, so that's the basic outline of how that background shader works. And like after doing all that, I then went through it and was like, okay, what are the different variables that can be tweaked with this? And so then after making that one background, I then just started playing around with it, and that's how I came up with all these other backgrounds. So like I say, originally I was going for this cloudy look, but then I started playing with these inputs, and I found out, oh, actually, I can make the stuff that kind of looks like sheets of water. So that's how you have that kind of like waterfall looking part. And also, there's another part I was messing around with there and found out, oh, I can actually, if I add in this variable, I can make the whole thing flip horizontally. And when I did that and started messing around with it, I was like, oh, wait, this kind of looks like some weird alien ocean or whatever. So that was fun doing, like right at the beginning of the process, just messing around and figuring out. So like fairly quickly, I came up with these 5 backgrounds, which were originally going to be the 5 stages, but then after realizing from marketing or whatever, oh wait, I need to make clear that this isn't Choran Shah in the sense of it's just the one
It's just
background
one
or whatever.
background. Yeah.
I then for like my showcase builds and whatever, I started putting that all into a single stage, and because it's all running off of the same shader, it's all able to sort of smoothly interpolate from one to the other, which again sort of adds to that weird dreamy feel. But yeah, so that was how that came about, and yeah, as I say, so because I was going for that dreamy look, and also there's a few things I was thinking of. One, I wanted it to be super simple production wise for me to execute on. And another thing I wanted to do as like a simple bit of polish is I I want for the player to be able to look at an enemy and have at least some idea of what kind of shots it's going to fire at them.
Mm-hmm.
Because so often with shmups, like if I were to have one criticism of like the genre as a whole, is that a lot of the shots just come from nowhere and you have no idea necessarily of which are the danger bits or not. There are some exceptions. So like turrets are a great example of something that clearly communicates to you, oh, this is where this thing is aiming. It's going to be
Straightforward.
firing this
Yeah.
kind of shot and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So my thinking was instead of making it where I come up with an enemy design, or I come up with a bullet pattern that fits some kind of enemy design, and then having to sort of make a bespoke model and like animation and behavior for each part of an enemy that's like shooting at the player. I thought, okay, if I'm going for this weird dream look, I'll just make the component parts and then basically kit bash them together to
That's
make a
awesome.
monster. So I was thinking like, okay, eyes, mouth, hands. There's other orifices and whatever that you can go for, but I decided to maybe use the
Yeah.
ones already existing to make that a bit more abstract. But anyway, so I basically modeled those parts, and then it was just a case of having Blender open. That's the 3D software I use. So
Mm.
never spend money on anything. Just
No,
use
no.
free
All
software.
free shit. All free shit. All day.
um,
Pirate.
yeah, yeah. So I basically had all those parts open in Blender, and I would just like start putting stuff together. So like, okay, um, obviously the Zacho, the popcorn enemy, that sort of designs itself as just one eyeball and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, obviously hands, they don't need any like accompanying things or whatever. But then the more complex stuff, okay, if I put the eyes in this arrangement, they can look like that and whatever, blah blah blah. Um, so that was the idea behind that, to make it super simple to design new enemies and to have those enemies sort of explain themselves, how they work intrinsically. That was the idea behind that.
That's
And
super important. Not a whole lot of game devs like get that idea that target acquisition becomes a lot simpler when an enemy explains itself. So like Goji Guy was explaining that he wishes that there was a shmup where the bullets would then explain themselves. Like there would be a different color, a different size, or a different shape. But that's really cool that you
yeah,
decided to
yeah,
do that with the enemies themselves, and then you can kind of know
yeah,
what you're expecting from there, not just in size, because I know a lot of shmups have it to where like Zako are small, medium, large, right? But
yeah,
like
yeah.
the fact that you found like your own kind of unique way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and this comes from actually being into the genre and whatever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I take notice of, okay, what is frustrating me as a shmup player, or not necessarily frustrating, but like, what do I wish was in this that's not there and whatever. And no, as you were saying, with that whole thing of like having bullets actually explain themselves and whatever, that's also part of it. And actually, it's funny. It's this weird back and forth between, okay, what makes this as simple as possible to actually produce, and also what makes this good for the player. So another thing is, I don't actually at the moment color bullets based on behavior. I had kind of done that with earlier builds, but something I had hit upon later on in development was because everything, and also because of this kit bashing thing. And I should explain that term for people who don't know. Kit bashing is this thing with models and stuff where you can have like different like craft models of different things and whatever. And what you can choose to do is, rather than just make the thing that they were specifically designed for, is like take different parts and use them together to make your own sort of unique model and whatever. So I think like
Oh,
with
Gundam has
Warhammer
totally
figurines
come
and
up on here
whatever.
before. Yeah.
No, yeah. So with Warhammer figurines and whatever, that's one
Mm-hmm.
aspect. And like again, that's one of those things where you don't necessarily, it doesn't you wouldn't have thought that applies to like game development or any other stuff, but I kind of realized that I ended up incorporating the idea again with sound design and whatever. Just you spend a lot of time designing from scratch a specific sound, and then after that you think of every single way you can twist and chop this to then suit all these different contexts and whatever. So 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 yeah, so as part of that, obviously then from the ground up, I set it up where, again, you define the color palette of this enemy. Like with background, you choose three different colors, and then it's able to sort of color itself automatically based off of that. And it occurred to me not too long ago, actually, probably like a month or maybe a couple of months ago. Oh, I can just tell the game to color the bullets based off of the enemy. So at the
Oh,
moment, enemies
okay.
just, yeah. So which it remains to be seen whether how well that works. I quite like it. Like of the times I've asked people about it, I've had like varying sort of responses to it. But in my head, I'm thinking, oh, that's good. So as a player, I can think, okay, there's a ton of blue bullets that are getting in my way. I should go for the blue enemies. Like they're the ones giving me trouble or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I imagine it in my head. But yeah, we'll see. But there's also like bullet shape for conveying like particular behaviors or whatever. But yeah. So again, it's this back and forth between doing what makes production much simpler and then going, oh wait, but then this also makes it better for the player and
Yeah.
whatever. So that's the way it works at the moment. So I don't have to like worry necessarily about thinking, oh, okay, so should how should I color this bullet based on the fact that it's aimed but it's slower than other bullets and all that kind of stuff. It sort of nullifies that. But yeah. Um I'm trying to think what else is there to explain with that. And then so like when it comes to the playership, that took a bit of time to get down to how I wanted it because I knew because I was drawing so much inspiration from Choran Shah, I wanted something that kind of evoked that ship shape and whatever without being it directly. And I also knew fairly early on I wasn't going to have a focus shot like with cave games and whatever,
Okay.
but I do like that interplay between going very slowly and then very fast, very slow, very fast. Like in my head, I had this image of the player going like 1, 2, 3, 4, duh, 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 kind of like that. And so I thought to emphasize that. I wouldn't have a focus shot, but I would have you slow down as you're firing. And that actually at the moment is something that I'm thinking about whether there's more to communicate that to the player or not. But anyway, so I knew there was that bimodal thing going on, so I wanted that to be reflected in the ship. So that's why, and because obviously I grew up with Star Wars and whatever, I thought of like X-wings and whatever, and so
Opening
I
up.
thought of that kind of thing where you indicate to the player, okay, you're in firing mode now. Now you're not, and um, and the other thing to talk about too is animation. At the moment, unfortunately, enemies don't have animation, but again, part of that kit bashing idea is I can design animation for an eye, and then that suddenly applies to
It will
everything and whatever. And
everything.
as I say, yeah. But at the moment, that isn't implemented yet in the game. But for the player, I do have a lot of procedural animation going on. So, and this is another thing that I've been doing for a few years now. And I suppose the first game where I really delved into that and sort of figured out my process for doing that kind of thing was Skip and Swing, the stolen build.
Yeah, yeah.
Because for that game, the way I can, for the longest time figuring out the core mechanics of that game, I just had a capsule, a pill shape, showing like the player body, and then a sphere would come out to grab on to things and swing off them and whatever. And I realize one of the things I'm quite grateful for as a game dev is that I do seem to have quite a good like imagination for how things will move in the final product or what would be my ideal final product. So
Using your
I was completely
experience.
happy. Yeah, so I was completely happy with this pill shape because the entire time I was watching this pill swing about and whatever, in my head I was picturing like again the inspiration was my frustrations with the original Assassin's Creeds and whatever, and so I was imagining an actual human person swinging around and whatever. But then when the mechanics were down and it came time to actually create visuals for this thing, I realized that I didn't have the ability and I definitely didn't have the time to then do all this stuff to make this look like a convincing human person. So I thought, okay, the simplest thing to do would be to let like arms and legs or whatever like just flap about on their own. What kind of character makes sense for that kind of animation? Oh, I know, like a tin can robot. So that's why that game, the player character is a robot, which also actually just has the one wheel, the one leg that it uses to move around with. Because I thought, okay, I wanted. First off, it makes it simpler, sort of rolling along the ground, so you don't have to animate a
Animate
run cycle and
legs.
whatever. And also, it conveys why the movement behaves in the way it does with certain stuff. But the thing is, like the single leg makes it easier animation wise, but as it turned out, it made it harder sound design wise because it was actually kind of tricky figuring out how to do like a rolling tire sound. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if anybody wants to know the basic idea, what you do is you have sounds that trigger as if they were footsteps. Just have it be like a dull bumping sound or whatever, like dun 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 dun.
And then just speed
And
it up.
well, yeah, you have it respond to the movement and whatever. But then, in order to glue it all together, you then have like this kind of sort of processed low level like noise going on underneath,
Oh,
and it's
okay.
like magic. Like if you get the bumps, you have to tune it, but if you get the bumps going fast enough, they still sort of read as separate things, but it legitimately does sound like a tire bumping along the ground or whatever. Like there's tons of cool sound design stuff. I mean, the other thing was sidewinding. For that game, it was really important. So another kind of inspiration for that game was the original Driver game for PS1.
Yep, I remember that one.
That one, I love that. I only played it for the first time recently, and I really recommend to other game developers like check out like these older PS1 games and whatever, because like it lets you know what an actual minimum like viable product is. Because like it's funny, like if you were to think about Driver abstractly, there's like not a lot going on with that game. There's like 3 or 4 cities, and like there's a few missions in each one, and
There's like
literally
three
all
different
you're
kinds
doing
of
is the driving
missions.
or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff. And yet, even though that seems quite limited, it does feel like a full experience or
Hmm.
whatever. So anyway, so one of the things I took from that game is like engine sounds feel really good in
Yeah, they
that kind of
do.
driving game. So I spent a lot of time doing this like weird layered thing with sidewinding, like all these different elements that come in and whatever. But anyway, that's another thing. Um,
What are some things that you would like to say before we sign off?
so first off, play Choran Shah because it's free. You literally have no excuse. There's Windows port. You can just try it out and see. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to say it on this YouTube channel because I'm assuming all your audience are schmuppers and whatever, so they don't need to be told this or whatever. But like that's the thing that I have been saying to people at like showcase events or whatever. It's like, oh, if you're liking this, then you can play this entire game for free right now. So do that. But also yeah, check out the links. That has everything to do with Shmandala on there. And yeah, the other thing, so at the moment, I'm in the lead up to Next Fest right now, which is happening on the 15th of June. There's also Bullet Fest happening right before then. So if you want to tell Steam, hey, this is what an actual like shmup is, this is what an actual bullet hell is, or whatever, then please do wish list the game, download the demo. To be honest, I'm not sure how it works exactly, but basically, when it comes time to the first 48 hours of Next Fest, the 15th and the 16th of June, uninstall the demo and then install it back again. Because the way the
Game
algorithm
the
works
system.
is
Yeah.
exactly. Again, apply your thinking with how to deal with an arcade game to the Steam algorithm. We need to beat it. We need to use every single dirty trick. But yeah, so and that's also why if anybody has seen like my comments or posts or whatever on Reddit, that's what that is about. I've never touched Reddit until like a few months ago, purely because that is like a good platform for like getting your stuff in front of a bunch of eyeballs and whatever.
Hmm.
Man, it's great that we didn't get derailed complaining about Reddit though, and like people who are on Reddit and Reddit
I
mods and
could.
whatever.
Yeah, I definitely could. We would
Yeah.
have been. It would have been an 8 hour episode if we had done
No, yeah, yeah.
that.
So yeah, that's the key stuff there. Like, help me beat the algorithm and whatever. And if you do play Shmandala and you're enjoying what you're seeing, please upload your runs. Unfortunately, at the moment, I am working on a replay system, but so far you have to do your own video capture thing, either using like the NVIDIA overlay, or I think Steam also has its own like screen
Yeah,
recording thing. But
it's a mess,
whatever it
but it
is,
does. Yeah.
yeah, whatever it is, upload your runs. Also, hopefully, over either Bullet Fest, but hopefully, definitely for Next Fest, I'll be putting on some kind of like score challenge or competition or whatever, and the idea will
Nice.
be like the top like I don't know 5 players or whatever, they get to have like 3 copies of the game or something and be featured in a trailer or something. I know. I'll figure out some way to to incentivize people, but yeah, so that stuff is happening. That's all the Shmandala stuff. At the moment, the release is planned to be the end of July as well. So this isn't going to be one of those 10-year long passion projects or whatever, because, I am hoping to make a living off of this. And like, so far, like a shmup can maybe justify 1 year of development to make like a reasonable salary or whatever. So that's the other thing too. So it's coming out soon this year. And the other thing I would say is to any game developers watching or potential game developers, definitely see about local meetups like in your area among game developers. As said, I came into contact with Pinfall Games from going to these Game Anglia meetups, and they've been great. Have been able to talk to my other developers, and like they're great at helping you out and all this other stuff. And like my fear before turning up to one of these meetups was, oh god, like video games is going to be like a bunch of antisocial weirdos or whatever. But like thankfully, having to actually show your face means that it filters out a lot of the people who are you don't want to be spending time with and whatever. And so there are weirdos, but they're cool weirdos. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like everyone in this community, yeah.
But yeah, and more generally with shmups and whatever, it seems like you have a bunch of like shmup events going on in the United States or whatever. Unfortunately, like as far as I'm aware, there doesn't seem to be as many over here, but I can probably see about
There's a lot of
investigating that
ones,
more. But
there's a lot of personal ones.
No, yeah, I suppose there's that. Yeah.
When I first joined the community, there was this guy that was like, "I'm putting on an event," and I was like, "Okay, where's it at?" And he's like, "It's over here outside of," and he named like an outside borough of London, and I was like, "Okay, maybe."
Oh yeah, I did see that one, but I missed it. But it's amazing actually. Like for these showcase events, it's always a relief meeting them, seeing them play the game, and actually like give the thumbs up and be like, yeah, no, this is cool. Because as I say, like Shmandala is meant to be a gateway for people. It's meant to show a more mainstream audience like what it is that's so cool about shmups, so that hopefully they then like explore the entire genre themselves. And yeah, and it's great. Like the last thing I went to, as I say, Game Anglia was able to send me to London Comic Con, and it was great because there was a few kids there. I mean, first off, any kids who showed up like had a great time because it's all these flashing colors and whatever, and it's very satisfying in that way. But there were a few kids there who really caught the bug, and they kept returning to it over and over. Like
That's awesome.
There was that post by that Filipina lady, is it? Like Ella Roche or Roche, however you say her name.
Yeah, I know.
Talking about like she had put on some events, and she was saying about the kids who refused ice cream so you could, do the caravan mode and play all that and whatever. And it was a similar thing with this where the parents were saying to me, yeah, we said, you can go to this kids play area and whatever, and he was saying, no, I want to play Shmandala or whatever. Like, didn't quite get the name right. There was one person who I was talking to an organizer, and they were saying like, oh yeah, can you send over a trailer for Shmandala? And I'd say to them, no, it's not Sham. It is actually coming out as Shmandala. That's a whole other thing, like what the name even means. But like,
yeah, real quick, tell me about the name.
Okay, like when you mentioned a mandala in your interview with a Joji guy, like my ears perked up. I was like, like someone who might get it or whatever. But like, so I first came across the idea of a mandala when I saw this clip on YouTube of these like Zen Buddhist monks, painstakingly over days, like tip tapping like
Mm-hmm.
powder paint or painter powder, whatever, to make this big, elaborate, sort of geometrically perfect picture. And then they finish it and they sort of look at it for a second and then they blow it
Blow
into
it
the
all
wind
away.
and then they start
Mm-hmm.
all over again. They don't actually blow into the wind by just like that mental image. What they do is they carefully like roll it up and dump it into a river, I think. But like,
Mm-hmm.
but ever since I saw that, like, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, I was always like really inspired by that, like creatively, because it is that process of like starting from a blank page and just relying on the skills that you've built up to then do this again, but not just do it again, but do it better. And so when I was thinking of names and I was thinking about this idea of showing people what's so cool about this genre and this style of design, I hit on that word mandala. The game is a mandala. It's you constantly starting from a blank slate and then, just seeing how much better you can do it this time.